Welcome into the Wedge Adjustment NASCAR DFS show. I'm your host, Josh Neal. You can follow me on Twitter at RotoRacer. PJ couldn't make it tonight, so I'm bringing a good friend of the show, Wheels. You can follow him on Twitter at DK Wheels. I'm pretty sure PJ will be back next week, but if you guys are following me on Twitter, if you guys are following Fantasy Degens on Twitter, you know there was an acquisition. FantasyDegens.com acquired TSF Sports. So in that process, myself, PJ, and Brian Gunnels, our MLB expert, are all joining the Fantasy Degens team, and we joined them yesterday to be exact. So very excited about that, and I just wanted to talk about it, first of all, for our YouTube guys. I know a lot of you reached out to me last night. You guys were worried that the YouTube show was not going to be around, but it's going to stay around. I know you guys love it, and I'm glad to be here. And it's going to continue. And also, you can catch me on FantasyDegens.com. We're gonna let Wills talk about more about the website here and coming up soon. So, just talk about what went through my mind and why I decided to do this. I've been using their tools for quite a while, and I've known Wills for about 2 years now. And I can just say the tools are awesome. I know the mass roster gen has helped me in NASCAR tremendously this year. It saves me a bunch of time because I remember last year I would set my lineups by hand and I would sit here for hours upon hours doing my lineups. But I can definitely say they've helped, and it really a 4-hour process is like an hour process, 30-minute process for you guys that don't know much about the NASCAR DFS. It really saves time. And the biggest thing for me is a Slack chat. The Slack chat it honestly pays for itself. I think you can get it in the basic package, which is around $10 a month. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wills, but I'm pretty sure you.
$10 a month, yeah.
Yeah, so $10, but I can tell you it pays off in like a day or two. I mean, you got guys like Brendan Solchild. He's probably the best CFL player right now in the DFS industry. You got you, Wills, one of the best in NASCAR. Solchild is pretty good at NASCAR too. So, I mean, there's guys. And Rob, he does a great job with MLB and the other sports. I know WNBA, they recently got put on DraftKings today. So a lot of exciting times over at FantasyDegens.com, and everything was just lining up. The people there, I can trust them. I have good relationships with all of them. And it was just a win-win situation. Myself and PJ, when we started the YouTube channel a couple months ago, our goal was to grow and grow and grow, and we grew our brand, and we've helped a lot of you guys along the way, and we can never thank you guys enough. But in order to grow, you got to build relationships, and I feel like this is a great mutual partnership we're going to have, and I'm just really excited to be on the team, and that's a little bit about why I chose it. And I just got to say, I'm very excited, and I'm going to let Wills talk a little bit more about FantasyDegens.com, and hopefully he can persuade you to check them out. I can guarantee you it's awesome, and definitely they're on the rise.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know how many of your followers have watched me from day one, but I've been in NASCAR since day one, since Charlotte 2015. If you followed me back then, we did our free get-together. It was, Pierce, Tobes, RotoDoc got on there. We used to just do a weekly get-together where we would just get on and literally talk picks, qualifying 1 through 40. I mean, we would break it down 1 through 40, or we'd go down through the salary and talk about each and every single driver. Obviously, I don't want to say that I left my roots by any means, but once we got back, once I started working with Rob again, because we worked together like 2 years ago, and we didn't have the team behind us, and we weren't able to go forward with doing what we had visioned. And now fast forward 2 years later, obviously I've picked up a little following from NASCAR. I picked up just respect across the industry, just knowing a lot of the guys and kind of teaming up with them and just starting to grow. So that's what we've done. We've got Rob building constantly, day in, day out. Basically anytime, 24/7, you DM this guy, and Rob is. It seems like he's up doing something to the site. So we definitely think that there's a lot of value in the tools, and it's really not expensive. I don't think so, and we've changed it up so that you don't buy sport by sport now. It's one price at different levels, and that includes Slack chat, roster gen, expert exposure, stuff like that. So there's different levels, but now you get every single sport, and they don't call us Degens for nothing. We've got WNBA, CFL, you name it. We're trying to get involved with it. So now that we've brought Brandon Soulchild on, now we've reached out and made a deal with you guys, acquired you guys, pulled you guys in, and it's not to to all your followers. It's not to change what you guys do. It's to keep all that intact and keep doing what you're doing. But now let's leverage ourselves and build together this relationship, and hopefully we get some of these followers to come in and take what you and PJ talk about on your show. If people are buying into what you're saying, take it over to Slack chat, bring it here, bring it into the roster gen, and literally they could come on your show, listen to what you say for half hour, 45 minutes, whatever the show is, and then just go and put some exposure into our tools, and bam, you're done with 5 lineups, 20 lineups, 150 lineups. It's honestly it's that easy. So definitely excited for this acquisition. Definitely excited for our future, and definitely I think if you haven't heard about us, I think that you will, because we've got some serious momentum going right now, and there's more fish, there's more lures in the water. So we hope to keep bringing those big acquisitions, the big news drops, which seems like it's becoming more and more regular. So
it's definitely an exciting time to be at Fantasy Degen, and you hit the nail on the point. It's very exciting. There's big news constantly, and I don't look for that to change anytime soon. So that being said, we're going to kick off the NASCAR part of this, and we're going to talk about strategy. And, I didn't get a chance to watch qualifying, but just catching up here when I got home from work, Kyle Larson immediately puts a nail on this, starting 40th, did not get out for qualifying. I mean, immediately when I seen that, I'm like, well, it's going to be chalk, So then you got some guys like Ryan Newman, back there, and there's all sorts of names all throughout the field, and you got Kyle Busch starting first, Truex starting second. I mean, it's just crazy. But I'm going to kick it off to you, Wills, and I want to get your opinion on what's the ideal strategy in building your lineups this week.
So obviously there's a small sample size at Kentucky, and there's been repay, but there's only been 6 races here, and there's only one a year, and it's a nighttime race, intermediate track. So it's kind of funny because when you break it down, and if you've ever been in our Slack chat, and even before that, I used to post my scorecard. I call them. I'll break it down by qualifying position, just so you can kind of see is P1. Head and shoulders above the rest, or is it place differential week, is it dominator week, etc. And then I break it down by driver. So when I broke it down by qualifying, over the 6 races, the top 3 scores are actually P1, P2, and P3. So there you go. It's definitely a Toyota kind of week, and I definitely see Kyle Busch and Truex probably basically just not letting anybody buy them. So, you talk about strategy. Well, the guy that's won this race 3 out of 6 times, who's scored over 70 points in 5 of the 6 DraftKings race, obviously not DraftKings, but his DK score over 5 of those 6 races have been over 70 points. Now it's kind of funny. It's just one of those things. It's a game theory play, but I don't think he's a great GPP play this week. I think he's one of those ones that you can hop off of because the public is going to be hammering him simply because he's won 3 of the 6 races. He scored over 70 points in 5 of the 6, and but just take a step back and do you see yourself? Do you see him getting by Truex and Kyle Busch this weekend? And not to mention, Kevin Harvick's in the middle as well. So he's got a big hill to climb, and Jimmy Johnson as well. I just think that he is. I think he's a game theory fade this week.
Yeah, I would agree with on that with Keselowski. And personally, it goes back to Wills's point. Finishing position is so heavy here, and when you can get guys at place differential, with qualifying, it's only going to add to it. So we're going to start out with our salaries like we normally do here. We're doing things just a tad bit different. We're going to break it down into 3 different salary ranges. We're going to start out with Truex. He's $10,400, and we're going to cover guys through Joey Logano at $9,000. And then that next range is going to start with Ryan Blaney at $8,700, and that's going to go all the way down to Daniel Suarez at $7,100. And then that final range is going to be Trevor Bayne at $6,900. It's going to go all the way down to $4,500, Greg Galding, but I don't think either one of us are even going to touch some of those guys. So, with that being said, I guess I'm going to kick this off real fast here and just get right to the point. Martin Truex Jr. You cannot start an intermediate track talk without Martin Truex Jr. He's just dominated. He's led laps at every single one, and he's always up there. I mean, as much as you want, you can go on statistics and all this talking about Truex. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. And I remember a couple weeks ago, I forget the track, but I was like, I think I'm gonna fade him here, and it's just a rule. I kid around about not playing Danica Patrick, Rule 567. If you're in the Slack chat, that's one of my rules that I kid around about. But I'm starting to think, Martin Truex Jr. at an intermediate track, rule that could be a top 10 rule, do not fade at an intermediate track. Starting P2, obviously Kyle Busch starts P1. But, these segments, cautions, the right side tire they're bringing, who knows? But I think Kyle Busch is probably the odds-on favorite. But Martin Truex Jr. is going to lead laps. It's just bound to happen in intermediate track. I'm not going to go too much into, laps led. He just blew that out of the water. He seems to win the most stages, and I really don't know what else to say. If you don't play Truex, you're asking for it. And for me, this goes back to our strategy talk. I think a lot of lineups are going to be Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, and Kyle Larson. I know that's probably going to be my trio. I think that's probably going to be a huge chunk of your trio too. I'll let you talk about that here in a sec. But, yeah, I mean, I really can't touch more base on that. It's just Truex, and Kyle Busch. But I'm going to get your side of it about Kyle Busch.
Yeah, so Kyle Busch, he started off the year, Toyota in general as a whole, they started off, and where their bread and butter has been intermediates, last year, they started extremely slow right out the gate. And, when you break down the 5 intermediate tracks this year, they're not like anywhere on the radar. And we really didn't see them turn it on until like Kansas. But the thing is, Kansas, I mean, what was that, like 6 weeks or so ago? So it's been quite a while since we've been able to get back to an intermediate. We've had road course in there. We've had some short tracks. We've had, obviously, Daytona last week. So it's good to get back to an intermediate for Martin Truex for sure. And I think it's definitely a good sign that Kyle Busch is on the pole. It's definitely a good sign that he's running the triple. It's definitely a good sign that they've been running better. And of all the Gibbs cars, and I'm talking specifically the 4 Gibbs cars, he has been the best one this year.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of luck just not go his way, and he's extremely hungry. I mean, you saw how him and how he raced Ryan Blaney when Ryan Blaney got his win. I mean, he is hungry for that win. He's coming up on almost a year out of victory lane, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it is crazy.
This guy has won on every single track but what, 2?
Yeah, I think
Jimmy
so.
Johnson has 3 that he hasn't checked off in his career. So you're talking about a guy that just wins. That's all he does. So he's definitely hungry. He's on the pole. He's running the triple header this week. Gets his crew chief back, and he was my race winning pick on our show on our podcast this week. So I'm going to stick with it. And from the pole, Kyle Busch.
Yeah, and my pick to win the race, if you guys didn't listen, make sure to go check out the Fantasy Degens NASCAR Kentucky Quaker State 400 podcast. I was on it last night along with Wills and Jeff, and it was really good insight. I recommend checking it out. My race winner was Joey Logano. I'm just going to touch base on it real fast because I can't pick him I cannot say my race winner, and I'm not going to talk about him. I was hoping for more speed. I think Keselowski's teammate has a better car, and neither one of them I think is going to pass those two that we just talked about. So really, Logano at 11th, I could see him coming in the top 5, but I would rather use my salary elsewhere. Moving on to my next choice is Chase Elliott, starting 12th. For me, you talk about a guy last year, when we went to intermediate tracks, he was a top 5 driver. This year, he's had his ups, he's had his downs, but I think he has something to prove this week. I know that I just got done saying, Joey Logano not costing that much and not leading laps. I do think, however, that Chase Elliott has something for these guys. I looked at some numbers from last year. I feel pretty confident that Chase Elliott's going to come the top 5. Obviously, starting 12th, this is a very good GPP play. The 10 through 20 range this week is that fair ground that no one's going to use. You got your Kyle Larson, you got your Ryan Newman, you got your Allmendinger, so forth, so on, Austin Dillon, and then you got your guys up front. We see this quite often this year where this range right here is left for the picking. And, you got guys like Eric Jones and Kurt Busch, Dale Jr., but I just don't see them being the threat that Chase Elliott is. I think he can go up there and mix up some lead laps, fast laps, but it's obviously a risky play. There's not much confidence, but that makes an elite GPP play. I don't think a lot of people will be on him as they should. It's Chase Elliott. He's obviously looking for his first career win along the same lines with Kyle Busch trying to get his first win of the year. So I think Chase Elliott's determined. I don't really have much numbers to back it up other than last year, and he's been there some this year. This is just more of a theory play. Other than that, I'm not saying go heavy on him. I'll probably have 15%, 20% myself. I'm not going to go too heavy on him and just don't have much confidence in it. But, that's the range you might want to attack this week. So
you say you don't really have any numbers to back it. He's only raced this race once, but again, like I said, I broke down the 5 intermediates this year. He is number 4 on that list, ahead of Kyle Larson at 55 DK points on average this year at intermediate. So
there you go. Will's saving my butt right there.
So for me, I guess my other one is kind of a cop out. It's Kyle Larson. I just want to stress that there's game theory plays, yeah. And I think fading Brad is a game theory play. I think fading Kyle Larson, that's just suicide. It's not a game theory play. He's obviously he was speedy in practice. His teammate qualified 4th. He is averaging 51 points at intermediates this year. Obviously, he's winning everything that he touches lately. Yeah. He's starting 40th. His floor is 4 points. I mean, that's his floor. Just lock him in. I mean, if he wins the race outright, which we've seen him qualify 40th before because he's missed inspection. and he raced his way up there in no time. And he will be up there for stage points at the end of this, at the end of stage 1 after 80 laps. And a win by itself, with no fast laps or laps led, is 85 points alone. There's only been four 100-point DraftKings days in the 6 races here. So just if he gets to the point, he's going to get a couple fast laps. He's going to get a couple laps led. Do I see him winning? No. But do I see him charging to the top 10? Absolutely. In no time, he'll be up there.
Let me ask you a quick question. For the people that love fading opportunities like this, what do you think his ownership percentage will be in cash and GPP?
Oh, I'm not a big cash player, so I'm gonna skip that one. But for GPP, it's very rare that you see anybody go over 65%. And I think he'll probably be right in that 60-65% range this week. But there you go. I mean, when you're talking 30% of people that aren't playing him, that's you're eliminating a big chunk of the field if he's on a winning lineup. And I expect him to be on a winning lineup.
Is it safe to say you're going to be 100%?
Yeah, there's no game theory for me. Just lock it in. It's a 5-driver week.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Every now and then.
All right. So we're going to move on to our next section. Let's see. Who do I have? Okay. So if you tuned into the podcast last night, or you've read it, or you watched it, listened to it this morning, I talked about Austin Dillon, and I talked about him potentially qualifying around 20th. Well, he qualified 25th, and that's a little bit further back than what I expected. And for me, that's awesome. But here's the thing, and I'm going to talk about another RCR affiliate here in a second in Allmendinger, but I haven't seen much speed from those guys this week. I'm a little worried because there's been some times in the past where you see Austin Dillon qualify and not showing speed, and he doesn't do much. He'll hang around 20th. So I am kind of scared about it in a way because the whole organization's not showing much speed in practice. With that being said, starting 25th, he has won an intermediate, given that was fuel mileage. This is an intermediate track. Fuel mileage may come into play, but I think there's going to be a little bit more cautions than we expect with this this new tire. Hopefully there isn't many cautions, but I do think there's going to be some different strategies, and it's just going to breed cautions. That's what I'm predicting. But anyway, back to the point. Austin Dillon, 25th. The guy has a salary of $7,600. Now, I know Wills is going to talk about Casey Kane here in a second, which I'm starting to come around to him a little bit more than Austin Dillon. But Austin Dillon is capable of top 15. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's going to give him upwards of, I think how many points would he get if he comes in top 15?
39 for 15.
All right, so that's right around 5 times his value. That's pretty good. I mean, if you probably want to win a GPP, you're probably going to want him to come closer to 12th, 10th. But just right off the top of my head, there are some other guys around this range. You ain't going to play Chris Buescher starting 22nd. I think he does have potential, but he's just starting way too far up. Another guy I touched base on that's starting around there is Michael McDowell. Too far up for me this week. So Austin Dillon, Casey Kane, those are 2 of mine, and I'm going to let you talk about Casey Kane here in a second, but I am worried about the speed with those RCR guys, but I'm hoping for top 15, and I know he's very capable of it. And also, another thing to point out, they did practice during the day. This is a not race, so take it how it is in practice. Things could change. So I'll let you talk about Casey Kane.
Yeah, so I was talking about this in Slack chat right before this, but I think Casey Kane is an excellent GPP plays. Flat out, just people have given up on him. We talk about recency bias. Well, he's definitely ruined some lineups. And just time after time, he's in good spots, and even he'll even be running well, and then late, something comes up and he ruins it. But starting 23rd, 7,700. I think that he's going to be. I think that he's going to be under 20% owned, which I think is going to be way under Austin Dillon. I think it's going to be way under Ryan Newman. Guys like that, and he's quietly looking back, he's quietly just putting up numbers that you don't expect, and I don't just mean that this year. I mean, over the last couple of years, is certain tracks where it's hard to believe. And so with that said, this year at the 5 intermediate tracks, Casey Kane is averaging 47 DraftKings points.
And
would anybody even come remotely close to that number if you're guessing off the top of your head?
I would never guess that. I would think in the 30s, 20s. He's just disappointed me so much, but that's crazy.
It really is. Last year he scored 34 points. The year before that he scored 9. But then the 3 years prior to that he scored 54, and 71. I mean, he's definitely. I think he's definitely capable of a top 15 and potentially better. He's got to be hungry, right? I mean,
yeah.
We're talking about a guy that's signed through 2018, and everybody and their brother has already written him out of the seat. He's signed through next year, and so Casey Kane's my pick. He's definitely my pick that I'm going to be overweight on. We talk about definitely like the Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, and Kyle Larson stacks. Well, from there, if that's what you're doing, you've got to get contrarian somehow, and I think that he's going to go overlooked, and I think, like I said, people have written him off. So
I would definitely agree with that, and I like Casey Kane a lot this week too. So moving on to my next guy, I obviously said I was going to talk about Allmendinger. I know I said the RCR affiliate, and they've not shown much speed, but you talk about a guy that's had bad luck this year. He'll run, he'll get up there, around 15th through 20th, somewhere in there, like 18th. And then something just goes wrong. I don't know. He has bad luck. He's just one of these guys that, talking about Casey Kane, something always is going wrong with him. He had a very good finish last week. I think that's going to boost their momentum a little bit. I think Chris Buescher has a little bit better car, but obviously we stated, he qualified 22nd. So I'm hoping, I'm hoping that they can get something tuned in. He starts 28th. So, I mean, you're hoping for a top 20. I mean, like you said, if you're going to use that trio, plug Casey Kane in, maybe plug Allmendinger in, you're looking pretty good, place differential-wise, and you got your lead laps. And, this guy, he finished 18th at Charlotte. So if he comes in 18th from 28th, who knows? He's going to solidly return value. The question is, can he make it through a whole race? He's an aggressive driver, and sometimes that really hurts him. I do think it's very risky, but I mean, 28th. I wouldn't use him in cash. I know, because I've used him in cash a couple times this year, and he's burned me. But I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to look into him a little bit more, because it looks great on paper, but I guarantee, if I dig into something, I could find something that says, "Whoa, caution." So, really, starting 28, that's the only backing I have of it. I know that's not what you guys want to hear, but this is so chalky of a week. Qualifying has really put us into a swirl. So that's what I have for him.
All right. So for my pick here, I'm going with Ryan Newman, and I'm not as confident as I was early in the week. Ryan Newman has in the 6 races here, he's put up 3 50-plus DK point scoring days. Over his last 3, over the last 3, he's averaging 44 points, DK points. So on paper, early on, I was definitely on him, and then obviously everything that happened with him in qualifying, starting 29th on the grid from the rear of the field, which doesn't concern me at all. But from 29th, he definitely will get some place differential. But the one thing that is scaring me is when I broke down the 5 race intermediate tracks this year, he's like bottom of the barrel. Well, he's only averaging 5 points. So I need to dig into that one a little bit more, because I'm not certain why that number's so low. I don't recall a ton of DNFs. I know he's had some, but maybe that's a culprit of the whole thing. But on paper, before I dug into all that, he was definitely high on my list as a value play.
Yeah, and if PJ were here, I'm sure he'd be all over Ryan Newman. As you guys know, that's his guy, and he's on him every week, so I'm sure he's on him. Oh, by the way, PJ will be doing a pre-race Periscope sometime tomorrow afternoon. Stay tuned for details later. Got to get in contact with him again about that. But moving on to our final section, and this section, it's got some iffy plays. That's a reason why we got more drivers in it. It's not that strong. 40 drivers this week, and a couple of them are just really bad cars that you just don't want. And it goes back to last week, when we saw all those guys blow engines. I mean, it's crazy. I know it caught me off guard, but this range has been so frustrating all year, because you think you got the guy hammered down and he just disappoints, and it's this guy, and it blindsides you. But we added some extra drivers in here this week to spice some things up. So I'm going to go with Rick. Well, actually, I think I got another one in that section, don't I? Yeah, I got Ricky Stenhouse. My bad. Ricky Stenhouse. Okay. For me, with him this is the thing. Everybody's going to be on him, I think, from last week. He won the race. He's won 2 races in a row now. And there are times, where you're wondering what the heck's going on with him. But here's a couple of things here. He's put together solid finishes at intermediate tracks this year. Name a couple. He finished, 13th, pretty good for him. He's finished, 14th at Texas. That's Kansas 11th. So starting 18th, I think this is a great play, other than ownership, because I'm not sure what it's going to be. I know I touched on 10 through 20 being the deadline. I think he's primed for a top 10, and I know last year he got in some trouble here. So his driver rating here is not going to look as good as it should. I know you're going to touch base on Trevor Bayne here in a minute, but for me, Ricky Stenhouse is a great play. He finished 11th the year before that, and I think that's when they got the repave, or was it last year? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's 2 years ago.
Yeah, okay. So he's very solid, and that team's got speed. Trevor Bayne does too. They're top 15 cars again, which is very good to see from Jack Roush. And I think 18th. The question is ownership. Do you think that those 3 guys that we were talking about earlier, do you think that people will go away from him, or do you think they're going to use him along with Kane and guys like that? That's to be seen. I'm going to think about that when I'm building lineups tonight, but he definitely jumps off the list at me. He's a couple of dollars cheaper than Austin Dillon, which is kind of crazy to me. But he's a great play for me, and he's got everything going right for him. So why not be on him?
Yeah, so I'll take the baton and go with the other Roush guy, Trevor Bayne. Again, I talked about him on our podcast pre any on-track activity, just simply because his numbers stuck out. 6,900. He's just not one of those names where you think Trevor Bayne is a good play. I mean, flat out. But when you dive into it, this year in the 5 intermediates, he's averaging 37 DK points. When you pull up his history here, he's been here. He's ran 2 races here. He's put up 39.5 and 46 DK points. He's averaging in the 2 races, obviously small sample size, plus 10.5 place differential. So when you factor all that in, even from P19, he would probably need to finish like 14th or better to pay off 5x his salary. But again, I think that I don't think he's going to be high owned by any means, and I kind of feel like he's going to be overlooked. And I don't think that a top 14 is really out of the picture. Just the way that he's quietly been running. Both of those guys have been. Ricky's been putting up a ton of top 10s this year that you don't picture that. And so yeah, for me it's Trevor Bayne in this range.
Okay, now I know what I did. I accidentally put Allmendinger in that group ahead, and I said Stenhouse. So that's going to leave me with my final pick and final punt, and that's Cole Witt. If you listened to the podcast last night, Will's touched base on this, and it was pretty awesome. He pulled up statistic for me. So this is basically Will's talking here, but I'm just going to use it as my pick. He is averaging 31 DK points at the 5 intermediate tracks. And that's pretty good for Cole Witt. It's awesome. And that's ahead of guys like Kurt Busch, Dale Jr., let's see here, Allmendinger, Menard, Denny Hamlin. But you've got Kyle Busch down there, but he's obviously had some trouble. But, that's Cole Witt. He has better average than Dale Jr. In what other year would we be saying this? So he starts 32nd, and I think, like you were pointing out to me, I think people will go Landon Castle here because, these 3 spots further back. But for me, I think Cole Witt's put together more solid finishes this year, and I can have more confidence. Landon Castle, for whatever reason, I touched base on him in the pod yesterday. He didn't show much speed today either, so I don't know where I'm at with Landon Castle. I don't know what it is. David Reagan looks substantially better, so I don't know what they're doing over there. But back to Cole Witt, starts 32nd and finishing 27th, whatever. That's going to return you value. And for a week, you want to put 3 guys that are very high priced in salary, maybe stick a 4th in there, maybe somehow. I think you're going to have a guy like this in Cole Witt, 5,300. He's pleasantly surprised this year, a lot of us, and a lot of the better guys in the industry have been on Cole Witt all year, and I don't see that changing this week. I think a lot of the sharper players are going to be on Cole Witt.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my he's definitely my punt of the week. No question about it. So for my last pick, I'm going to go with Ty Dillon from P27 at 6,700. Really, all that you need out of him is a top 20, and that's easily achievable in my eyes. And I know I keep hitting on this the 5 intermediate tracks of the year, but I think it's pretty important. And Ty Dillon is averaging 34.5 points at those tracks this year, which let me see. Let's pull that up real quick. 34. That puts him right around 18th. Gives him 35 points. So again, the top 20 gives him right around his average, and it pays off 5x value.
Yeah. So that being said, we've closed that out. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Now we're going to go on to our next segment. As usual, we're going to pick our race winner. We're going to pick the most DK points, and we're going to get out of here. It's late night. I know I'm tired. I know Wills is tired, but I'll be up for a couple more hours doing some more research. But I'll let you kick off the race winner.
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with Kyle Busch. He's on the pole. He's got his crew chief back, which is big for having that first stall. He's got his crew chief. He's got that stall. He's got the clean air. He's got an intermediate track at night. He's running the triple header. I feel like he's going to set the pace. And, obviously I'm not going to rule out Truex leading any laps along the night, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a two two-car race between those two, and I really see him winning. One or two of the stages, if not putting himself in victory lane, and that's where my money's at.
Yeah, Ben. I think Kyle Busch is gonna win too. I'm gonna go a little bit out of the box here as I normally do, and I'll just talk about someone else who has a chance. I touched on Joey Logano, so if you want to hear my Joey Logano spiel, check out that pod once again. But if I had to pick someone other than Kyle Busch, I'm just going to say Truex next. But I'm going to go with the third choice here. And let's see. Let's just throw Kevin Harvick in here. Kevin Harvick's really strong, and I definitely see him having a chance at leading laps. Whether he gets past those Toyotas, that's another story. But I talked about him yesterday on the pod. He's finally won a race, and I think that's going to do miracles for that team because they can finally be more aggressive. And that's one of the things going for Truex and Jimmy Johnson right now. They can take more chances. They can do so many different things. They can set their car up different. It's a whirlwind when you have a win in your bank and you can do so many different things. And I think Kevin Harvick, when a week where it's going to be Kyle Busch, Truex, Larson, Keselowski, those guys, Kevin Harvick's just going to fly under the radar. And I think, in terms of DFS, he's a very sneaky GPP play. But, I'm going to say Kevin Harvick can get it done. Obviously, I think Kyle Busch and Truex are the favorites, as they should. But he'd be my third choice to win. I think he showed some pretty good speed in practice, but getting past those guys is another thing. And I'll let you take it away with the most DK points.
So most DK points.
Other than Larson, how about that?
Other than Larson, well, since I already said that Kyle Busch is going to win one or two stages. I said he's going to win the race. So if all that comes true, then he owns two of the four 100-point DK scores, and let's chalk it up and give him a third 100 burger this weekend.
Yep, sounds good. So other than Kyle Larson, I'll just go Truex. If Kyle Busch doesn't fully dominate this race, I think it's going to be Martin Truex. And we've seen Martin Truex just dominate these races in the past, and I think it's very, very possible again. So that's who I'm going to go with. Wills went Kyle Busch. Race winner Kyle Busch. I picked Kevin Harvick. And that'll do it to close out the show. Once again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. And once again, remember, I'm a member of Fantasy Degens, PJ is a member of Fantasy Degens, and Brian is a member of Fantasy Degens. Make sure to go check out the website. Get in that Slack chat. I cannot say it enough. It will help you so much. I don't know anything about CFL. But what Soulchild has taught me in the couple of days, couple of weeks, I mean, you'd think it's just crazy, It just, like I said, it pays for itself. Can't talk enough about those tools on the website, and it's really going to help me build these lineups here in a couple hours. Trying to go to bed. So make sure to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube. Like I said, these videos will continue to be put out. I want to thank Wills once again for coming on tonight, getting this show out. PJ should be back next week, and we're going to have these guys on. We're one big family now, so we're going to have Wills on a couple more times, I'm sure, in the future, and have a couple of those other guys come on. So very excited about the future here. And that being said, I'm going to close out the show, and best of luck to you guys. Hope you guys win some money from their advice tonight, and we will see you next week.
Yeah.